We're on the road with Mickey, we're gonna have some fun. Regardless of the rain or sun, our trip has just begun. So buckle up, let's go, we're about to start the show. And maybe if you like us, you'll see where else we'll go. Hi everyone, I'm Sophie, he's Mike. Welcome to our little corner of the podcasting universe. Hopefully you like the sound of our voices and you want to stick around for the show. Not that it stays in one place for long. I mean, after all, we are on the road with Mickey. So hop in the car and buckle up your seat belts because we've got an awesome adventure this week. Now a brief rundown before we get moving. First up, our roundtable talk where we'll discuss the main topic for this week, followed by some Disney trivia ranging from Disney history to a random Disney character of the day. Well, that's just about it. Everybody ready? Let's get this show on the road.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike and she's Sophie.
Hi.
And we're on the road with Mickey. This is podcast episode number 38 for September 21, 2020. And our feature topic today is our favorite Disney resort. So I think it'll be neat because we're going to talk about the resorts that we've stayed at and kind of narrow, what we liked about each of them a little bit and kind of narrow it down and come up with a favorite, and each of us will have our own favorite for what is our favorite Disney resort. So I hope you all enjoy it. But first, like always, we have some cheddar from the Big Cheese. And Sophie, I thought I would take the first two.
Okay.
And then you take the last two. How about that?
Okay, yeah. All right. Last two
Because then you
for
get
me.
you get the good news to report, and I get the not so good news. So first up is the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover, which was not open when we were there in July, and it's still not open. And the original date they were saying it was going to be ready is November 21st, and now we're not even sure it'll be ready then. So they've extended the refurbishment or repair or whatever they need to do for it until at least the end of November. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be open when we're able to go, because I know how much I miss not being able to ride it, and I really like that.
Yeah.
That's an
I
awesome
love
ride.
the People Mover. I love it too.
Not being able to ride it is kind of hard. It's such a relaxing thing to do. So that's bad news number one. And bad news number two is that Disneyland, the executives at Disney have been disappointed that it's taking Governor Newsom from California so long to issue reopening guidelines for the theme parks. And that's not just for Disneyland, it's also for SeaWorld and Knott's Berry Farm and all the other ones out there in California. Now, Governor Newsom says that those plans are coming soon, and this morning I saw a headline that said it'll be very, very soon. But so far, still no idea. And the last report was that Disneyland has canceled reservations for those that were planning to be there as of October 3rd. So that means there's no reservations until after October 3rd. So it'll be interesting to see when it opens. I still think it'll open sometime in October, but who knows when at this point.
Who knows?
But anyway, those are two bad news items that we have for Cheddar from the Big Cheese, and Sophie is going to talk about
the positives.
Some better news, right?
Yep.
Take it away, Soph.
Yeah. On a happier note, the Disney Parks blog released their hashtag Disney Magic Moments series, and it's a post with YouTube videos regarding the Pirates of the Caribbean. It's a great tie-in from last week's podcast, Disney Attractions Made into Movies, because you all know that we spent at least 5 minutes talking about the Pirates of the Caribbean series.
Yep.
And over at Tokyo Disneyland,
An all-new Beauty and the Beast ride will be opening on September 28th.
So that's 10 days or so.
Yep.
Week from today. Week from
Yep.
when it goes live, and a week, 10 days from when we recorded, because we were recording on September 18th. So
That is super soon. I didn't realize that Tokyo Disneyland was open.
it is open, I believe, and this is part of an expansion that they're working on, and that it'll be open
Ooh.
on September 28th. So that's kind of cool. That's exciting, and we're not there yet, but maybe one day we'll get over there. Um,
Mhm.
and the last thing I wanted to touch on is, you hear us on our podcast, but I wasn't sure if you knew that we also have a YouTube channel, right, Sophie?
That's right. And sometimes when I'm scrolling through YouTube, I will actually see our videos pop up, and I'm like, wait a minute, why is my face on the internet? And I'm like, oh, that's why.
Yeah. So, if you are interested in checking us out and seeing what it's like, um, from behind the camera or in front of the microphone or whatever, however you want to do it, we have a YouTube channel, and I have the link in the show notes, and it's also in the On the Road with Mickey group. I'm going to post it. So feel free to go check it out, and and just give us some likes and subscribes, and we appreciate it if you do. I think
Mhm.
I think we have a lot of fun. So hopefully
We
you're
do.
enjoying our podcast too.
Mhm. And hopefully you don't think our faces are ugly.
Nah, I don't think they think that at all. Well, at least not yours.
Oh,
Um,
come on. I hope they don't think that about mine. You, my good sir, are a model.
oh, thank you, honey. But anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about our favorite Disney resort.
Mm-hmm. We've
And
compiled a list of all the resorts that we've stayed in over the years, and we
yeah,
are going to talk about each of them and maybe see which one is our favorite at the end of the episode.
yeah. So going down the list, the first couple that we stayed at were moderate resorts, and
Mhm.
they were Coronado Springs in 2007 and 2008, and
Mhm.
then Port Orleans French Quarter in 2009 and 2010. And in 2010 was big news because that was when we were able to buy some points with Disney Vacation Club. And
Oh, yeah.
so the next year, 2011, we stayed with family at Bay Lake Tower. We also stayed there in 2014 with our friends from California and some of our friends from Raleigh. Um, and then we stayed in 2012. We stayed over at Kidani Village at Animal Kingdom's Lodge, which is the DVC part, or a DVC part of Animal Kingdom. So so those are four that we stayed at, um, up to 2014 or so. And Sophie, why don't you take the last four and tell our listeners what ones we also stayed at?
We also stayed at Pop Century,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really awesome resort. I would totally recommend it. It's a value
Yep.
and it's super close to a lot of the parks actually. And then we
What makes it really cool is the Skyliner, right?
oh yeah, but when we stayed there, they didn't have the Skyliner yet.
Exactly. Exactly. All
But
right.
it was still cool. And then this one is one that we stayed in, not at Disney World, but over at Disneyland. We stayed at the Grand Californian Hotel, which is
Hmm.
beautiful.
It's
It is,
it's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
yes. And then that same year, because we stayed there in 2013, we also stayed at the Grand Floridian Resort and Spa when we went to Disney World later that year. I didn't know we were going to Disney World that year, but it was super fun, and I love
Yeah.
the Grand Floridian. And then finally, these last 2 years, we've been staying at the cabins at Fort Wilderness. We stayed there for when we went to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, and we stayed there when we went this last July.
Yep. So so all told, we were going through some topic ideas, and I was like, let's do a topic for our top 10 Disney resorts.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at our list, we don't have 10, we have 8.
Yeah.
Because we like the ones we've stayed at quite a bit, so we stay there multiple times. But
Yep.
I think that's on our bucket list, isn't it, Sophie, to stay at every Disney resort at some
It's on
point?
mine at the very least.
Yeah, I think if it's not on mine, then it is now.
I
So,
mean, at the very least.
oh, sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. What was that, Sophie?
Oh, I was saying that this November, when Jake and Aunt Sheila and Uncle Randy come to visit for Thanksgiving, I will be knocking off one more, and that will be the Caribbean beach.
That's right, because you're going to spend a night with them before
Mm-hmm.
we come down, before Mommy and I come down, and we're staying at Pop Century, and you know, so we're going to
Yep.
cover both sides of the Skyliner spectrum.
Uh-huh. But I really cannot wait to see what the Riviera Resort is all about. That looks so pretty.
Yeah, it does, and we haven't been in there yet, um,
No, we've
but maybe this
we've
next
gone
trip,
over it.
right? And we've
We
seen it
have
from the
sailed over it
Skyliner.
with the Skyliner, yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, it looks really cool. I think you all will really like that one. But for now, let's get on to the rest of our topic. And Daddy,
Hmm.
tell me about Coronado Springs. Let's just go on down the list.
Well, Coronado Springs Resort was the first one we stayed at, and that was before I was a travel agent, and Mommy and I were trying to figure out where we should stay, and we originally were thinking, well, let's just stay at the All Stars. Um, but then we read some reviews about how the bus terminals are and everything like that, so we decided we didn't want to do that, and we got some really good pricing for looking at a bigger room, which is what Coronado is because it's a moderate resort. And so we decided let's stay there. And we had a really great room. And some of the highlights for that resort that I really like are the swimming pool, the main swimming pool. And I think is it called the Big Dig or something like that? Or
It's called the Dig Site, I think, because it's based around an ancient Aztec or Mayan temple that it's an archaeological site. That's what it's
yeah.
themed around.
Yeah, and it has a really cool slide, and it's got some neat features of the temple, the pyramid and whatnot that you can see, and it's just a really cool thing. And also at Coronado they have a lot of different areas for you to stay at. They have more like a hotel feel room, and they also have like a cabana type room and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. And also Coronado has gone through a recent renovation, and all of the rooms have been renovated, and they are really super nice now. Um, so it's really up there on the list. And the last thing that they did is they built this huge tower called the Grand Destino Tower. And it
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, like 16 stories tall or something like that. And the neat thing about that is if you stay in the tower, then you can watch when they have them, you can watch the fireworks from Epcot and see them from this tower. That's
Yeah.
how cool it is and how high up it is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it from when we first stayed there, the landscape and the sight lines for the resort have changed a lot. But it's a really neat and it's a southwestern theme. Like Sophie said, Aztec and Mayan kind of theme,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a really great marketplace. They changed the name of it, but it's still kind of still there where you can do that. And with it being a moderate resort, it also has some table service restaurants there as well. But um, but it was a really neat place for us to stay, and it was a good one for us to stay. And we liked it so much in 2007 that we stayed there in 2008 as well.
Yep.
So,
And although I might have been very young at that point, because let's see, 2007, I was only 6 and 7 years old when we stayed there, wasn't I?
yep, exactly.
Yeah. So I was pretty young, but even I still liked it.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who's listened to our podcast knows that that's the one thing I don't like about the resorts is that to me, when I was younger, it meant that it was time to leave the parks when we went to the resorts.
Yep. It
So,
was.
oh well. I
But
like
we
them a
liked them
lot more
anyway.
like now. I like
Yeah.
them a lot more now.
Yeah. So, Sophie, why don't you talk about the next one on our list from 2009 and 2010?
Oh, it would be my great pleasure to do so. The next one on the list is Port Orleans French Quarter, and that one is it is really, 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 really fun. I would
It's
recommend it if you have small children, just because it is themed around Mardi Gras. So there are giant, bright colors everywhere. You can
hmm
sometimes they pass out beads and Mardi Gras coins, and everything is just bright and fun and bouncy, and your children will love it. Especially the way that the food court is set up. All you have to do is look up, and there are a bunch of Mardi Gras masks, and I know I've said this twice now, but it is just so colorful. They will be awestruck by it. And of course, the beignets are very hard to pass up, too.
Yeah. French Quarter obviously is themed after the French Quarter of New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found really interesting about the French Quarter was how when the Princess and the Frog movie came out, how much the scenes in the movie reminded me of being at the Port Orleans French Quarter. And Port Orleans used to be one big resort. It was just called the Port Orleans Resort. And they split it up, and they've got a section that's for Riverside, and they
Mm-hmm.
have the section that's the French Quarter. But because they split it up, the French Quarter is the smallest moderate resort on Disney property. So um, it's really quiet, and
Mm-hmm.
it's cozy, and it has water taxis that take you up to Riverside or down to Disney Springs. So you've got an alternate transportation method to get to where you want to go. And
Yep.
obviously, if you want to go to the parks, then you take the bus transport.
And
But
Riverside is themed more around the bayou, sort of.
exactly,
We have
yeah,
not stayed there, but Port Orleans is its sister hotel or resort. So even guests can go up and have access to both of the resort's pools. We've said this before,
yeah,
but it's
it's worth
it's
repeating.
really, oh yeah, it's really worth repeating.
So, and so we liked it so much that we stayed there in 2009, and then we stayed there in 2010. And I think that year was when we surprised you, Sophie, with Stephanie coming for the first time, wasn't it?
Yes, I think that was.
And that was also the year that we bought our DVC points for the Grand Californian Hotel. And um, and Stephanie likes to take credit that we wouldn't have done that if she hadn't been there.
Yeah,
So
well, I mean, it's partially true.
yeah. But anyway, that was those were our first two resorts, and they were our first 4 years. And so I really like with Port Orleans. I also like the pool. They have good pools at all of the resorts, but the first two resorts we stayed at had really good slides on their pools, and
Hmm.
I and
And
I
the
think they're just a lot of
theming,
fun. Yeah.
the theming was beautiful. You don't
Yeah.
get this with some of the other ones that we were talking about, but the way they make their pools look, you almost forget it's a pool. It's not
Right.
like the regular pool that you have in your backyard because Coronado Springs' pool, it's like an arc. I already said it's like a dig site. Port Orleans pools, they have statues of different characters dressed for Mardi Gras. In fact, these ones were gators, I think.
hmm
And they're dancing around. The statues are dancing around in the areas beside
On
the
the
pool,
pool deck.
and the
Yep.
slide looks like a giant sea serpent, and you slide down out of its mouth.
Exactly. So it's a lot
Hmm.
of fun. A lot
It
of
really
fun.
is. It's an amazing pool, and it's huge, actually. It seems so big.
Yeah. So in 2011, we stayed. It was our first time we had stayed at a DVC property, and the first property we chose was Bay Lake Tower at Disney's Contemporary Resort. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason we stayed there um, was because we wanted to be right next to the parks, and we had a big group with us. It was the three of us. It was Sophie, me, and Mommy, and then it
Mm-hmm.
was Stephanie and her boyfriend, and then it was Cindy's, my wife's brother Otis, and
Yep.
his wife Nancy, and their daughter Anna Jane,
Yep.
and Nancy's mom Sherry.
Yep.
So
So that's 9
9 of
people.
us, and so we had a big 2-bedroom suite at Bay Lake Tower, and we used points to stay there. And that was partly why we bought our DVC, was so that we could bring friends and family and enjoy our vacations even more,
Mm-hmm.
and do things that they wouldn't necessarily do otherwise. So, with Bay Lake Tower being right next to the Contemporary means we could walk to the Magic Kingdom, we could hop the monorail, and we could go and then switch monorails to go to Epcot, or we could
Mm-hmm.
take bus transport to Animal Kingdom and Hollywood Studios. But we had so much fun there. Um,
Yeah.
it's a
It
very
was.
modern resort, so it's contemporary, just like the resort is, in that it's a modern kind of feel to it. But
Mm-hmm.
it still has some neat Disney theming to it, doesn't it, Sophie?
It does, definitely. There
Do
is
you?
art. I
Mm-hmm.
remember above my bed, there was a painting. It was an abstract one, or no, it wasn't abstract. It was a pop art painting, and it was of Mickey. And then over Anna Jane's bed, it was Minnie Mouse. So
Uh,
yeah, they have Mickeys scattered all throughout the resort, but you wouldn't, well, I mean, you would see them if you looked for them on first glance, but it's not like it's not themed the way that Port
it's not
Orleans
in your
is.
face, kind of.
No, it's not in your
It's a
face.
subtle theming. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Kinda subtle.
yeah.
Kinda. And then of course there's the pool. The pool is actually pretty small for Bay Lake, but it's still nice because it's right on the coast of Bay Lake, which is a man-made lake, I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Yes, it is.
And even though it was man-made, I remember when we were at the pool, I think, yeah, in 2011 with Anna Jane, Uncle Otis called me over and I looked out over the gate that separates the pool and the resort from the lake, and there were, I think, otters
I
on
think
the,
I think you're right.
yep, there were otters on the coast, on the beach of the lake, and you can't go out there on your own because safety reasons, but they were still very cool to see.
Yeah. So we stayed there for Sophie's 10th birthday, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and for the most part, staying at Bay Lake Tower, you're staying there for the proximity to the parks. That's the biggest draw it's got. Although I will tell you though that the pools that Sophie referenced, it is a smaller pool, but it's actually shaped like a hidden Mickey. So it's a Mickey ears design, and but it has a slide to it, and this slide you actually climb up like 2 stories or something like that, and it circles you around. And if you're in the water in the pool when someone goes, you can see them go by, and because it's a slide, you go pretty quick, so it's almost like a shark going through, through that slide. It's really kind of cool.
Yep. It's
So
I think you went on that side, Daddy. I was too scared to.
I went on it and I enjoyed it, and I did that slide multiple times. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we also stayed there in 2014, and
Yep.
both times we stayed there, we had lake view rooms, so we didn't have the view that was able to see the castle and all that right from our room. But in 2014, we were able to see with our balcony. We could look and you could look to the left and you could see Space Mountain,
Yep.
which is the closest big attraction to Bay Lake Tower.
Hmm.
So,
And that was the year that we went with Riley and Jagan and their families,
yep,
2014.
exactly. So, so then the other place that we've stayed, also a DVC property, was Kidani Village, and we stayed there in 2012 with our friends Neil and Carrie and their children, and our friend
Hmm.
Monica and her daughter, and the three
Yep.
of us. So it was really a fun time because the nice thing about Animal Kingdom, of course, is that you've got the big savannah, right, Sophie?
Oh yeah, and there are a bunch of animals on that savannah because it's part of Animal Kingdom Lodge, and therefore I think it's super close to well, of course it's super close to Animal Kingdom, but I think the savannah for the lodge and the area where they keep all the animals in Animal Kingdom, I think those might be connected, or
I
at
think
least
they
they're
might be.
super close to each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, if they're not connected, they're really close, and I think they are connected. But
Hmm.
but the nice thing about our room this time is it's still a two-bedroom because of the amount of people we had. And by the way, for a two-bedroom, you also get a full kitchen and you get a complete washer dryer right in your room, so um, you don't have to eat out. You can eat your meals right there. You can prep your meals and make your meals right there in your room if you want. Um, and so that's an option if you do that. But we did a Savannah view room, so we had
Technical
access.
issue. Hang on. We were having technical issues. Could
Yeah, I'll
you
repeat that. Um, so for our Savannah view room, we had access right to the savannah. You could see the animals right from our balcony. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on with our technical issues today, but I think Sophie's
mm,
back. But
yeah, I'm back. I'm back.
but anyway, so staying at Kidani Village was neat for the most part the because of the Savannah view. Um, the other thing that was neat about it though was that at Animal Kingdom Lodge you can do nighttime looks at the animals with night vision goggles. And we didn't do that this time, but I had done it previously and it's kind of neat. It's hard to see them. You can't always pick out something, but it's kind of neat to try anyway. So next time we're there, Sophie, we'll try that out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I don't know when we will be there next, but I would definitely like to stay at Animal Kingdom again because I really, really liked the Animal Kingdom Lodge. It is gorgeous
Yeah,
inside that
it
resort.
is. It really is.
And I think Mommy would be really happy to see her giraffes again.
Oh, no doubt, because we all know giraffes are mommy's favorite character or animal.
Yep.
So, so next up on our list is Pop Century. Sophie, you want to talk a little bit about Pop?
I would love to talk a little bit about Pop. I would like to talk a lot about Pop.
Go for it.
Pop Century is an amazing resort. It's a value resort, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not as expensive as the I'm rem, I'm trying to remember. Are the value resorts more than the moderate or
No, the values are the least expensive.
okay.
So
So
value,
yeah,
moderate, deluxe, deluxe villa. That's the way
yep.
the pricing goes from lowest to highest.
Okay. Yeah, value resort. It is a very good value resort because you would think that because you were paying lower that it would be less, but it's not. It is a very spunky resort, and most importantly of all, the reason it's called Pop Century is because it focuses on different decades in the 20th century. I think it
Yeah.
starts from the 40s and goes to the 90s.
Yeah, I don't remember if it's the 40s or not, but it's at least the 50s. Um,
Yeah.
but you might be right. It might be the 40s. I don't remember. But
Mm,
yeah, each decade has a different theme, right, Soph?
mm-hmm. Yep.
So
And we
like
stayed.
we stayed in
We
the which one did we stay in, Soph? Sorry, I
we
keep
stayed
stepping on
in.
you.
Oh no, you're fine. We stayed in the 90s because
Yeah.
I remember there being a Lion King poster in our room, and the Lion King came out in the 90s.
Yep. And Stephanie, of course, she stayed with us this trip because we went down for the 40th anniversary of the Magic Kingdom. So this was 2011. And we were there September 30th through October 2nd. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was a short trip, but we were able to stay there, and we stayed in the 90s, which of course Stephanie took perfect credit that it was because she was born in the 90s is why we got a 90s room. So
Mm-hmm.
so we'll let her believe that.
I
It was
really
because
have
of
to wonder which era we'll be staying in this November because
I don't
the
know.
90s is the only one that we've stayed in. And just based on my dad's answers to what I'm saying, they assign rooms for you. You don't get to pick which building you're in
Right.
because that's how the rooms are designated. They're separated by buildings, and the buildings are themed to fit whichever decade you get placed in. So the
Right.
90s, and even the staircases are hidden inside these giant replicas of things that you could find from each decade. I think
Right.
there was a
What
Rubik's Cube, there was a yo yo, and I think the one for the 90s building was a telephone.
I think it was. Um I can't remember exactly, and I haven't been there but the one time. So I'm looking forward to our trip in November. And you can
Mm-hmm.
request a room, a specific layout or a room choice, um, and you might get it, you might not. It's a request only, but they do try and accommodate as they can. So we'll see what
Mm-hmm.
we get. I'm gonna look at where we want our room request to be, and I'm gonna put that in the next few days. Um, but um, but yeah, they each decade has its own different theming for it, and so it's kind of neat. One of the advantages, of course, now with Pop Century and Art of Animation, which we haven't stayed at, but they're separated only by a lake, and so there's a walking bridge to from one to the other. But one of the neat things that they have going for it now is that they have the Disney Skyliner, and they have a stop right there. So that's
Mm-hmm.
partly why we chose Pop Century for our where we're going to want to stay. That's part of the reason why. Um, just like Caribbean Beach was chosen by Sheila, because also it has a Skyliner stop. So that's
Yep.
something that really interests us is having that access.
Yep.
So
And the rooms are rather small in the Pop Century just because they're value resort rooms.
mhm,
But I think the theming more than makes up for it. Yes, you don't have a kitchenette or anything in the room, but there is a food court in the main building of the resort.
right, right. So I'm excited for this upcoming trip, and I can't wait to report back how it went. Um,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so that's Pop Century. The next one I'm going to let Sophie talk about because it's in almost her home state because she spent so much time over there visiting our friends in California. So why don't you talk about this hotel a little bit?
Yeah, this one is more my suit just because even though I've only stayed in it once, I've been closest to it the most because many of my trips to California were trips where I went on my own and my parents didn't come with me. And the one that I'm talking about is the Grand Californian Hotel, and it is beautiful. I have, ever since I laid eyes on that resort, I have always adored the style that it was built in, and it was built in the craftsman style.
Yep.
I don't know when that came about, but many of the houses that you see where they are a lot of angular shapes and mainly squares, those are the craftsman style houses, and they are beautiful to look at. And I have I've only stayed in a room in the Grand Californian once, but I have walked through it a lot whenever I went to Disneyland with Aunt Sheila and Jagan. And Jagan, they actually changed out the bed frames in the Grand Californian a few years ago, and Jagan managed to get her hands on one, so now she sleeps in a Grand Californian bed every night in her
Exactly.
room, and it was a steal, and I'm super jealous because that bed frame is well,
It's
not
so
adorable, it's
cool.
beautiful.
It's so cool.
Yeah,
Now,
I love it so much.
if I remember correctly, the Grand Californian is themed after a a hotel in Yellowstone National Park, I think, and it's the
Hmm.
Old Faithful Inn. I think it's themed after that, but it also kind of is a similar vibe to Wilderness Lodge over at Walt Disney World.
It
But
definitely is.
it is definitely the signature hotel, in my opinion, anyway, for Disneyland. Um,
It is
the
the
original, of course, is the Disneyland Hotel, and Paradise Pier is more like a moderate resort. And
mm-hmm.
Grand Californian is a DVC property. And so when we stayed there in 2013, it was so funny because it was the only DVC place we stayed at where it was just the three of us. So we just got a studio, is what we went for what we needed because we only needed a room that would sleep the three of us, and a studio would accommodate that. And with a studio, you get a kitchenette. But what was neat about it is we got there flying in from Raleigh to LA, and we get there and our room wasn't ready yet, and we didn't expect it to be ready yet. And so they told us they would text us, and so we had a rental car, we went to Target, and while we're at Target, we get the word that our room was ready, which was faster than we thought it would be. And when we got back to the resort, they give us our key and everything, and we went to the thing, and we opened the door, and the bed is just covered, like
in rose
covered
petals.
in rose petals. And
And the towels look like two swans kissing. I don't think they
yeah,
realized that I was there.
well, yeah, they knew you were there, but it was almost like they thought that mommy and I were on our honeymoon or something. And I don't know. That was
Who
really
bring
It was really
who
weird, but it was so cool, and you had so much fun with that.
I did, but who brings their teenage daughter on their honeymoon?
Yeah, not even
That's my
teenage. You were
only.
12. So, yeah, I know. It was just weird. But it was cool. We loved it. And
It was
you loved
cool.
those rose petals, and you collected every single one of them, and
Yeah,
you
because
put
it
them.
didn't want you sleeping on rose petals.
Yeah. But the other neat thing about our room was it had a balcony, and when we
Mm-hmm.
opened that balcony, it about floored me because we were looking right over what is now Pixar Pier, um, in California Adventure Park, Disney's California Adventure Park. And so we
Yep.
could look, we saw like half of Mickey's Fun Wheel. And if we looked to the right, we saw Goofy's Flight School. And
Mm-hmm.
in the evening, we couldn't see all of World of Color from our room, but we could watch it on the TV and we could listen to it. Um, but what
And
was
we
really
could
neat,
see the
go,
Technicolor lights of the
yeah,
Mickey's Fun Wheel because that is so pretty to watch. And that's why World of Color is one of my favorite parts of Disneyland.
yeah. And not only that, what's really neat to me is when we would be ready to go to sleep, we would crack the door a little bit, and we would be able to go to sleep listening, and you could hear the music from what was, what we always knew as Paradise Pier. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you could hear the music while you drifted off to sleep. And I thought that is like that is like the primo thing, to me anyway.
Yeah, it
So
is amazing.
that
I
was a
loved
really
Grand Californian.
yeah, that was a really cool place to stay. I'm so glad we stayed there.
Mm-hmm. And the next one on our list, this one is from the same year as the Grand Californian. We went to Disneyland, and I think this
Right.
came about by me saying that it was weird that we went to Disneyland instead of Disney World, just because Disneyland is a lot smaller than Disney World. So it was like, it just feels weird. I don't know why, but it feels weird. So then a few months later, we went in June, July, one of those 2 months
I'll tell
for
you. Let me tell you the
Disneyland.
story, Sophie.
Okay.
So we went to the Grand Californian in June, and we went to the Grand Floridian in July. And the reason we went was because that was the year I became a travel agent. And that
Mm-hmm.
year, um, Lisa and Steve Griswold, who are the owners of Pixie Vacations, they arranged an agent get together, just a time for the agents, whoever could come and just relax and hang out and do stuff. And so they got a block of rooms, and that's how we were able to get really good pricing for the Grand Floridian, because otherwise it would have been outside of our budget. But that's why we went in June to the Grand Californian, and then in July we went to the Grand Floridian, and that was
Mm-hmm.
so much fun because we were there with agents, and we met some really cool agents, and we got to know each other better, and it was a lot of fun. So
Oh yeah.
so
It was so much
that's how
fun.
that came about. And I had always mommy and I had always talked about staying there for our 25th anniversary, and we actually stayed there during our 13th year of marriage. So we
Mm-hmm.
beat that by like in half. We cut that in half. So
Well, hey, I mean, it's your 20th anniversary now, maybe in 5 years.
go back. I think we might.
Yeah.
We
Mm-hmm.
might. So, but the Grand Floridian, the beauty to me, obviously proximity to the Magic Kingdom is one of the things that's really cool, right?
Yeah, I
And
agree.
the lobby area with the orchestra playing and the piano player and all that, and just how fancy and opulent it is. Those are selling points about what really makes the Grand Floridian stand out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about it? What else comes to mind for you? Anything specific?
My favorite time to think about the Grand Floridian is Christmas time.
Oh, yeah. Because
Yeah.
of?
The gingerbread house.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That,
it's such a big lobby too. It's got a huge Christmas tree that gets put up.
oh yeah, that lobby, it is beautiful to look at any time of the year, but they really outdo themselves for the most wonderful time of the year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so,
And I don't I don't think our guests particularly know about the gingerbread house. I know we mentioned it. We've mentioned it a lot, but I
yeah,
don't think they truly comprehend the gingerbread house unless they've seen it for themselves. It is a real gingerbread house. The walls, everything, they are made out of gingerbread,
yep,
and it is big enough to fit a little shop. People can go inside it, and they sell cookies and chocolates and all these different
yep,
treats from inside the gingerbread house.
yep. And every year they make a brand new rendition of the gingerbread house out of
Yep.
fresh material and everything. It's not like they put it aside or something like that. But
No.
this year they're not going to have the gingerbread house, which is sad,
No.
and it's all COVID related. But they're still going to have it decked out for Christmas themes and Christmas trees and so forth. So that'll be good.
Mhm. It will be good.
But
And
you're
I
right, Sophie. You have to see it to believe it. It's just, and it smells so good in there.
mm, I can smell it already. Great. Now I want chocolate. Pick me up some
So,
chocolate when you get home, Daddy, please.
okay, we'll see.
Thank
So
you.
the Grand Floridian Resort and Spa is, in my opinion, it's the signature resort at Walt Disney World, just like the Grand Californian is signature resort at Disneyland. So,
Mhm.
and then
I agree.
after that, we spent a few years where we didn't stay on property. We stayed off property and had just as good a time, but we like staying on property. And so for the last October, when we went for the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party, we stayed at the cabins at Fort Wilderness, and we did again this year when we stayed when we went for our July trip. And that
Mhm.
and so we stayed at the cabins 2 years in a row, and so we had a good time with it, but the cabins are more rustic. That Fort Wilderness is called Fort Wilderness for a reason, and it's got a lot of outdoorsy things that you can do that don't even involve going to the park. And we talked about all that. Um, but the
Yeah.
nice thing about the cabins is that you can fit a family of six in there. So if you've
Mhm.
got six people in your family, it might be worth checking it out, because it might be worth staying there.
Or
So,
even just five, four, even three for us, because we
hmm
were a family of three and we stayed there this July, and it was very comfortable in there,
yeah,
even even with snoring, which I'm ready to admit now that it was both of us, but
yes,
mainly you. Mainly you.
of course. But anyway, we'll ignore that and just move on, shall we?
Yes, we shall
Okay.
move on.
So those are the resorts that we've stayed at, and I know we kind of glossed over the cabins a bit, but tell me, Sophie, if you had to pick one of those as your
Hmm.
all-time favorite Disney resort, what's it gonna be? No pressure. Remember, there's no wrong answers at Disney.
Hmm. My all-time favorite?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have two. Well,
Oh,
three, actually.
three. Okay.
Yeah, and they're
So,
not top three. These two are the ones that I loved above anything else, but I don't necessarily need to stay there again.
okay.
And these two are the Grand Californian and the Grand Floridian.
I understand exactly what you're saying, Sophie.
It was amazing to stay there at both of them at least once, but I think I could be just as happy going and visiting them from another resort and just sitting in their lobby.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the beauty of Disney is being able to park hop, not park hop, but resort
Resort
hop.
hop. Hop.
Yeah,
Basically hop anywhere. That's
yeah.
the beauty of it. The one that I really, 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 really need to stay at again, I think, would be Pop Century.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
good that we're staying there in November then.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the cabins are awesome. I love the cabins. But I think if I had to choose there, I would want to try and get into the lodge itself.
Yeah, which is Wilderness Lodge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a separate thing. So, um,
Yeah, but I always considered them to be almost sisters. They're not like the Port Orleans ones, but they are very close to each other and they're very similarly themed. And they even have boats that
mhm.
run from one resort to the other.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want to stay in the lodge.
Okay. Okay. Well, Wilderness Lodge is on my list to stay at too. And I totally understand what you're saying about the Grand Californian and the Grand Floridian. And I think I agree with that because if I go back out to Disneyland or when I go back out to Disneyland, I want to stay at Disneyland Hotel. I mean, that's the OG. It's the original. It was there when Disneyland opened, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to stay there or I want to stay at Paradise Pier too, you know? Kind of
Yep.
check out what's different about that. So so yeah, out there, I don't necessarily need to stay at the Grand Californian again. Um, and of the ones that we stayed at, I would say my favorite would probably be, hmm, I would say my favorite, and it's gonna be a shocker to mommy, but I think my favorite is Bay Lake Tower.
No, that's not a shocker.
Well, it is because I always thought, I didn't feel like it had enough theme, you know? And so I felt like, okay, it's just an ultra modern resort, and part of me still thinks that. But what really sells it for me is that that it's so close. You got such proximity to the parks, you know? So for me, I think my favorite was Bay Lake Tower and being able to walk over and go to the Magic Kingdom or walk over to the Contemporary and get on the monorail and do all that. I think that's really cool. So
I think of the resorts that we haven't stayed at yet, though, I think it's safe to say that you probably really want to stay at the Contemporary.
yeah, at some point it would be really cool to stay at a Contemporary room that was in the tower and
Mm-hmm.
that was a theme park view. Now,
Definitely.
those are some serious change, you know. Those are like, I don't know, 800, 900, $1,000 a night. So, Sophie, don't be holding your breath thinking that's going to happen anytime soon.
No, I'm not, Daddy.
But you know what? You know where I want to stay for ones we haven't stayed at? Where I really want to stay is I want to start looking at staying at Beach Club or Yacht Club
Hmm.
or
Those
Boardwalk
are
Inn, you know?
Old Key West, maybe?
Well, no, not so much that. Although it's a nice resort, but I'm thinking Beach Club, Yacht Club, because then we can just walk into the back room, the back entrance of Epcot, or we could take the boat over to Hollywood Studios. And so you got this great proximity to everything, you know?
You're right. You're
So
right.
to me, that's a destination spot there is to
Mm-hmm.
stay there once or twice.
Yeah,
So
you're right. Old Key West is pretty awesome, though,
it
from what
is.
we've seen of it.
It is.
And even though we kind of had a little mix up with Thanksgiving night that one time, because we went to a restaurant in Old Key West for Thanksgiving night,
We
but
went to Olivia's.
yeah, unfortunately they were a little understaffed. I really liked it. I liked what I saw of it.
I liked it too. I liked it too. Um, I like the resort, and I agree. I think it was just an understaffing issue there, but
Hmm.
you know, it is what it is. The food was still good. So, I think that wraps us up for our feature topic, Sophie.
Yep, I believe it does.
So we are now moving on to this day in Disney history. So what do you have for September 21st, Sophie?
Hmm. I have two fairly recent ones that I think you will like. They concern Epcot.
Okay. I'm listening. I'm all ears.
Okay, September 21st, 1994.
Okay.
Apple Computer begins sponsorship of Epcot's Innovations East. Do you remember Innovations? That's
Yes.
in the center of Epcot before you reach World Showcase,
Yep.
everybody.
Mm.
And It features places like Mouse Gear, Innoventions, and it's based around the innovation of technology.
Yeah.
And so it's very special that Apple was sponsoring Epcot in 1994.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, in 1996,
Okay.
Illuminations 25, a new show to celebrate Walt Disney World's 25th anniversary, debuts at Epcot, although it will have an official premiere in October.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I didn't know it was called Illuminations 25. Do you know if it's anything like what Illuminations Reflections of Earth was?
I think that it might have been a special version of it. Hold on.
Okay.
Illuminations 25. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Not sure.
What was yeah, no. I
Okay.
don't I don't think there was anything before Illuminations. So it seems to me like this is just a different version of Illuminations, and it
Okay.
might focus on Walt Disney World a little bit more than it focuses on the rest of the world. But here is a quote from it.
Okay.
And I don't know who said it, but I think this was whoever was the speaker for Illuminations at the time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Illuminations 25, a celebration of the magic that you, our 25th anniversary guests of honor, have brought to Walt Disney World for 25 magical years. Join us now as the countries of World Showcase welcome all of you to our worldwide family.
That's cool. And that sounds like probably part of the actual opening, you know? You can
Yeah.
picture with the lights, the fire, the flames going down, and you can hear the narrator, and I can just picture him saying that or her saying
Yep.
that. So,
That it sounds to me like just that, Daddy. That was the intro, I think. All
okay.
right, well, that is all I have. Why don't we
Okay.
move on to our Who's Who character?
We're going to. And I have something really interesting. Um, I thought it was really funny. Sophie and I were talking before we really got rolling about another topic, um and the topic is about Disney movies that we haven't seen. Okay. And in the course of that topic, Sophie said the name of a movie that is exactly where I was going with.
Hmm.
And the character that I chose for our Disney Who's Who character is from the movie The Black Cauldron, and it
Hmm.
is The Horned King.
Ooh.
And I have not seen this movie, but reading this description about this Horned King makes me really curious about this movie.
I've heard descriptions of him before, and he reminds me a lot of Chernabog from Fantasia. And if any of you have ever heard me talk about Chernabog, you will know that he is my all-time favorite villain just because of how powerful and indiscriminately evil he is.
Yeah. So listen to this description, Sophie.
Mm-hmm.
It says the Horned King will stop at nothing to find the Black Cauldron so that he can raise an evil undead army of cauldron born to destroy all living things in Prydain. He seeks to be a god among men. He also controls many evil forces, including the dragon-like Gwithaints, the green dwarf Creeper, and his henchmen. The Horned King has a ghoulish look with a skeletal body, 2 twisted horns on his head and glowing red eyes. He wants to control Hen Wen so he can use her powers to locate the Black Cauldron. The Horned King's desire for power ultimately leads to his untimely demise as he gets sucked into the Black Cauldron and destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And let me show you a picture of him. Let's see if we can make it work.
And for those of you who are unaware, what?
I was like, it made me disappear.
Oh, nice.
See? There, I'm gone. Just a hand. Hello. I can't make it work. Anyway.
And for those of you who are unaware, Hen Wen is a magical pig.
Okay. Yes, he is.
She
is. Anyway, one piece of did you know about the Horned King? From his picture, he looks like a sorcerer. And it says, did you know, although it is implied the Horned King is a sorcerer of some sort, he actually performs very little magic. He displays his powers only to teleport into his castle's mess hall and to call upon the spirit of the Black Cauldron. That's the only time. So
I did not know about that just because I have not seen the Black Cauldron.
And neither have I. And so that's on our list of perhaps movies that we want to go check out, and see if it's on Disney Plus or whatever, and maybe come up with a show topic about some movies that we haven't seen that are interesting to us. So, and now my Walt Disney quote is on the subject of television, and in particular, Walt today is talking about the Mouseketeers, Sophie.
Ooh.
And listen to what he says. Quote, our contribution to television is entertainment created without deviation from our conception of what entertainment should be. Again, we feel there is a strong secondary value here in that watching the Mouseketeers and their guests in action, boys and girls in homes throughout the land will feel impelled to discover and develop their own talents, whatever they may be. And that's really cool because that shows how people can be positive role models for those that are younger than them, and how they can use that status of them being on television to help someone else to determine where they want to go in life, So I think that's a cool quote, or a cool set of quotes. It's actually 2 quotes, it feels like.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that is our Disney Who's Who character and our Walt Disney quote for this week. So do you have anything else you want to add, Sophie?
No, that is all I can think of.
Okay. Then I will close this out by saying that On the Road with Mickey is sponsored by Pixie Vacations by Mike Ellis and Tech Solutions NC. If you have any computing or travel needs, reach out to them. Tech Solutions is found at techsolutionsnc.com or on Facebook, and you can reach Mike for travel needs at mike@pixievacations.com or on Facebook at Pixie Vacations by Mike Ellis. Sophie, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you everyone for listening, and we will
see you on the road.